Hi, James Lee Job here, Poet Laureate for the city of Davis, California, with a poetry reading for you from the poems of César Vallejo of Peru, who actually lived a lot of his life in Europe. Vallejo was a poet, a writer, playwright, journalist, and he only published 3 books of poetry during his lifetime. He didn't live that long. He died in his 40s. He's still considered one of the great poetic innovators of the 20th century in any language. When he was in his early 30s, he left for Europe and lived in Paris. But his life there was not successful. He slept at times in parks or on the metro. And he lived without warm clothes and often only had potatoes to eat or nothing at all. Still, he was known as a poet, and his work and his politics combined allowed him to travel a couple of trips into the Soviet Union and read there. He died of an illness, as I said, only in his 40s. We're going to read some poems from scattered around his career. The first is one of his better-known poems in America, called The Black Riders. There are blows in life so violent, don't ask me. Blows as if from the hatred of God, as if before them the deep waters of everything lived through were backed up in the soul. Don't ask me. Not many, but they exist. They open dark ravines in the most ferocious face and in the most bull-like back. Perhaps they are the horses of the heathen Attila, or the black riders sent to us by death. They are slips backward made by the Christ of the soul away from some holy faith that is sneered at by events. These blows that are bloody are the crackling sounds from some bread that burns at the oven door. And the man, poor man, he swings his eyes as when a man behind us calls us by clapping his hands, swings his crazy eyes, and everything alive is backed up, like a pool of guilt in that glance. There are blows in life so violent, don't ask me. The Spider. It is a huge spider which can no longer move. A spider which is colorless, whose body, a head and an abdomen, is bleeding. Today I watched it with great care. With what tremendous energy to every side it was stretching out its many feet. And I have been thinking of its invisible eyes, the death-bringing pilots of the spider. It is a spider which was shivering, fixed on the sharp edge of a stone, the abdomen on one side and on the other the head. With so many feet, the poor thing, and still it cannot solve it, and seeing it confused in such great danger, what a strange pain the traveler has given me today. It is a huge spider whose abdomen prevents him from following his head. And I've been thinking of his eyes and of his many, many feet. What a strange pain that traveler has given me, the spider. This is called God. I feel that God is traveling so much in me with the dusk and the sea. With him, we go along together. It's getting dark. With him, we get dark, all orphans. But I feel God. And it seems that he sets aside some good color for me. He's kind and sad like those who care for the sick. He whispers with sweet contempt like a lover's. His heart must give him great pain. Oh, my God, I've only just come to you. Today I love so much in this twilight. Today that in that false balance of some breasts I weigh and weep for a frail creation. I weigh, W-E-I-G-H, I weigh and weep for a frail creation, frail creation. There's a lot in that line. And you, what do you weep for? You, in love with such an immense and whirling breast? I consecrate you, God, because you love so much, because you never smile, because your heart must all the time give you great pain. Poem to be read and sung. To be read and sung. I am actually not going to sing. I know there is someone looking for me day and night inside her hand and coming upon me each moment in her shoes. Doesn't she know the night is buried with spurs behind the kitchen? I know there is someone composed of my pieces whom I complete when my waist goes galloping on her precise little stone. Doesn't she know that money, once out for her likeness, never returns to her trunk? I know the day, but the sun has escaped from me. I know the universal act she performed in her bed with some other woman's bravery and warm water, whose shallow recurrence is a mine. Is it possible this being is so small, even her own feet walk on her that way? A cat that is the border between us two. A cat that is the border between us two. Right there beside her bowl of water. I see her on the corners. Her dress, once an inquiring palm tree, opens and closes. What can she do but change her style of weeping? But she does look and look for me. That is the real story. But she does look and look for me. That is the real story. This is kind of a prophetic poem, Blackstone lying on a white stone. He predicts his death in Paris on a Thursday afternoon, and he did die in Paris of an illness in his 40s, as I mentioned, but it wasn't on a Thursday in real life. Blackstone lying on a white stone, César Vallejo. I will die in Paris on a rainy afternoon, when someday I can already remember. I will die in Paris, and I don't step aside, perhaps on a Thursday, as today is Thursday, in autumn. It will be a Thursday because today, Thursday, setting down these lines, I have put my upper arm bones on wrong. And never so much as today have I found myself with all the road ahead of me, alone. César Vallejo is dead. Everyone beat him, although he never does anything to them. They beat him hard with a stick and hard also with a rope. There are the witnesses, the Thursdays, and the bones of my arms, the solitude, and the rain, and the roads. We'll finish with this poem called The Roll Call of Bones. The Roll Call of Bones. They demand in loud voices, we want him to show both hands at the same time. And that simply couldn't be done. We want them to check the length of his steps while he cries. And that simply couldn't be done. We want him to think one identical thought during the time a zero goes on being useless. And that simply couldn't be done. We want him to do something crazy. And that simply couldn't be done. We want a mass of men like him to stand in between him and another man just like him. And that simply couldn't be done. We want him to compare him with himself. And that simply couldn't be done. We want them to call him finally by his own name. And that simply couldn't be done. The poems of César Vallejo. These translations were by Robert LeBly, but there are others available. If you love these poems, if you love these poems from these readings do something for you, seek out the poets on your own. Here in Davis, our library has reopened. You can't go in, but you can order books online and pick them up at the curbside when they're ready for you. These poets that I read for you, Google their names, know the names of their books, and order them from the library. You don't have to spend a dime. Enjoy great poetry. Shelter at home safely and take care of yourself. From the city of Davis, California, James Lee Job.